Sometimes it was by accident. Squatters took over the spaces and were sometimes careless with candles or cigarettes. Sometimes it was by design. Someone looking for a cheap thrill. Someone who didn't care what kind of damage they might do to surrounding homes or the people who might be in them. "Where are we going?" Sean gave him the address. Reece was familiar with every street in his district and didn't need GPS to help him find it. "What do we know?" "Not much. The fire department figured it was another arson case. When the debris started cooling and investigators got their first look around, they found what looks like human remains." Reece stopped the car at a red light and waited for it to change. They weren't exactly in a rush. Getting there a few minutes sooner wouldn't change the outcome for the poor dead soul they were going to help. "They're not sure." Sean shook his head. "Fire destroyed most of the body. They're not touching what's left until forensics arrives." The light changed and Reece drove on. It was easy enough to find with the flashing lights from the squad cars and the group of people from the neighborhood all gathered on the far side of the police tape. Reece parked the car and surveyed the group. All too often, the perpetrator of the crime couldn't resist returning to be a part of the crowd. Half the building was standing, but it was a burned-out shell. Someone had to have called in the fire before it got too out of hand. A dilapidated fence with flecks of white paint still clinging in hope to the wood separated the yard from the sidewalk. Although to call it a yard was being kind, it was about 3 feet of thick weeds and dirt. The senior investigator broke away and met Reece and Sean halfway to the crime scene. "Forensics and the medical examiner are inside. The body's in what's left of the concrete basement." "How was the fire started?" Sean asked. The inspector wiped his brow and shook his head. "Unknown accelerant. Something made the body burn fast and hot. The house is old and wooden. It didn't take long for the entire thing to be engulfed." Reece listened with half an ear as he scanned the crowd. He took note of a group of young men on the far edge of the police line talking quietly among themselves. "Ready?" Sean was beside him and the inspector was on his way to his truck. "Yeah, I'm ready." He hated this part of his work. With his heightened senses, the stench from a crime scene was overwhelming at times. Of course, those same senses could help him find the perpetrator. It was a trade-off, one he'd decided was worth it years ago. The ground was muddy, a combination of water from the fire hoses and the dirt from what had passed as a small yard. A set of concrete stairs led down. Debris was piled all around. Reece breathed through his mouth, but there was no escaping the stench of charred wood, the sweat from the forensics team and the firefighters still on scene, and the lingering smell of burned flesh. None of the others would be able to detect the last one, but Reece could. Sometimes being a werewolf sucked. Technically, he was known as a half-breed, even though he was 3/4 werewolf. His acute vision picked over the debris before focusing on the area where the forensics team was gathered. Reece moved off to the side, circling slowly, careful to watch where he put his feet. Sure enough, where they'd found the body seemed to be the most heavily burned, as though the fire had radiated out from that point. He sniffed the air again but couldn't make out any accelerant. Strange. He usually had no trouble detecting chemicals of any kind. "Be careful," a member from the medical examiner's team cautioned the forensics technician currently working the site. "Shit." Reece moved closer as the technician jerked back and raised his gloved hands. "I didn't touch the bone. I didn't." As they all watched, the bone turned to dust and disintegrated before their very eyes. "We'll be lucky to find any DNA to make an ID." The man who'd issued the warning turned to his colleague. "We're going to need sample bags, not a body bag. There's not enough of this guy left to examine except under a microscope." "Fuck," Reece swore inwardly. "What do you make of this?" Sean asked. Like him, his partner had been watching the proceedings, taking in everything. "Damned if I know." Problem was, he did know. There was only one way he could think of for a body to burn so hotly and completely without an accelerant, a way that the body would turn to dust so that nothing remained to be examined. Whoever died here was most likely a werewolf, or at least a partial one. He prayed he was wrong, that the forensics team would find another explanation, but he didn't think they would.